Welcome to Barcelona and the launch of this, the all-new Nissan Juke. Now, believe it or not, Nissan has sold more than 1 million Jukes since the car first went on sale back in 2010. But back then, there were really only 2 rivals for the car, whereas these days, the new model faces competition from more than 25 other small SUVs, including some really great cars like the Volkswagen T-Roc and the new Skoda Kamiq. In this video, we're going to be finding out what's new about the looks, what's nicer about the inside, how well it can drive itself, can an adult now fit in the back, and how you can make your Juke look different from everyone else's. But before we kick off, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. I know I sound like a bit of a broken record because we say this in every video, but if you don't hit subscribe and you don't turn on notifications, we can't let you know about all the exciting videos we've got coming up over the next few weeks. Also remember that we don't only do reviews at What Car, we can also help you get a great deal when buying. Ultimately, we don't care which car you end up choosing as long as you're happy, but we do want to see you pay a fair price for it. So to find out how much you could save, just Google What Car Deals or click the link above. Now let's start with the looks, because let's face it, that's the main reason this car has been such a massive seller over the last 9 years. And as a basic silhouette, it doesn't actually look that much different from before, does it? You've still got this quite aggressive rising shoulder line here, these muscular rear haunches, and other things as well, like this door handle that's hidden in the side of the door frame there, these black plastic wheel arch trims, and also if you come around to the front, these big round headlights here, they're all very much Juke hallmarks. But there are actually some quite big differences, and to help us point those out, we've magically summoned an old Juke. So one of the biggest differences, obviously the size of this grille here at the front. On the new car, it's much bigger. It's still called a V-motion grille. On the old car, it was smaller. Probably the biggest difference though, are these indicator lenses. Now, on the old car, they're much higher up on the bonnet and they protrude as well, whereas on the new car, they're sleeker, they're slimmer, they're more conventional. But if we take a look around at the back, these old sort of bulbous boomerang headlights have been replaced by these much sleeker and more modern lenses that again look a bit more like what you'll find on a Qashqai. And the whole car is actually quite a bit bigger. It's 7.5 centimetres longer, 3 centimetres wider and just over 1 centimetre taller. But actually it's the gap between the front and the rear wheels that has grown the most by just over 10 centimetres, which should do really good things for passenger space. And we'll be finding out if that's the case a little bit later on. Finally, the Juke is available with up to 19-inch alloys, which are absolutely massive for a car of this size, and bigger wheels than you can get on the vast majority of small SUV rivals. Overall then, the look is quite similar to before, but perhaps a little less quirky and a little bit less Marmite. But as we know, looks are a very subjective thing, so we want to know what you think. Let us know. Do you think the new Juke looks better than the old car, or do you actually think Nissan has played it a little bit too safe, and do you actually think the old car is a better looking thing? Let us know by voting in our poll. So we're inside the new Juke, and I've got to say, it is so much nicer than the old car. Admittedly, this is a range-topping Techno Plus model, or what's equivalent to that in the UK, but you've got some bits of Alcantara here on the centre console, on the dash, on the seats, and actually everything feels really solidly put together as well. The centre console here doesn't feel at all wobbly. These air vents here, I particularly like them, the turbine style shape, but also the middle bits are made of metal, and actually, I don't know if you can hear, but a really satisfying click when you switch them on and off. There are a few bits of hard scratchy plastic in here, like on top of the doors here and just below the heater controls, but overall the impression is really, really good. But it's not just interior quality that's moved on, because the driving position is also much, much better than it was in the old Juke. I remember we actually had a long termer in the What Car office for about a year, and every time I drove it, I just couldn't get comfortable at all. And that's because the steering wheel only moved up and down. On this new car, it also moves in and out, and that means I can get much more comfortable, and it suits a much wider range of body shapes and different heights. Now, you do sit slightly lower than you did in the old Juke, but you still feel like you're in a proper small SUV. And I haven't got the measurements to prove this yet, but certainly in terms of perception, you feel like you're a little bit further from the road than you do in something like a VW T-Cross. Visibility is also better than it was in the old Juke. That's mainly because of these slimmer windscreen pillars here, but also because the door mirrors have been dropped slightly, so you get a better view out of the front and also out of the side at junctions, although the view out the back, that's still pretty terrible because of this rising shoulder line and those really chunky rear pillars there. From a usability point of view, the new Juke is pretty good as well. Thankfully, Nissan hasn't bowed to the latest trend and put all of the air conditioning controls into the touchscreen. You've got physical dials for adjusting the interior temperature, and you've also got physical buttons for turning on the heated seats. So in our view, that is a very good thing. And that brings me on to the infotainment system. Now, apart from entry-level Vizia trim, all versions of the Juke get this 8-inch touchscreen, and it's pretty easy to use. The icons are quite nice and big, but the screen resolution isn't that great. And also, sometimes when you press an icon, it can take a while to respond. You do get lots of gadgets though, including Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring, and if you upgrade to N connector or above, you also get a built-in sat-nav with live traffic. I'm not sure why you really need that these days, because anyone with a phone can use Google Maps or Waze, but if you do want a built-in sat-nav with live traffic information, then N connector trim is the one to go for. To help out with parking, if you go for a centre trim, you'll get a regular rear view camera. And if you upgrade to a Techno model, then you'll get this really handy, if rather low resolution, 360-degree bird's eye view camera. Nissan also says this is the most connected car it's ever made. And one of the reasons for that is because you can download this app to your phone. And that means you can remotely do things like finding out your car's location, but also honking the horn, unlocking the doors, and switching on the headlights. Storage space in here is not as good as something like the new Kamiq, but there's a reasonable amount. You've got a small cubby under the central armrest here. You've got a couple of cup holders that will take a small bottle of water or a takeaway cup of tea or coffee. And there's another tray in front of the gear lever here, and that's useful for stowing your phone. Door bins are quite narrow, but they do widen at the front. So again, they're fine for stowing a bottle of water. And also the glove box is quite a reasonable size as well. Now, another area of the new Juke is much, much better than the old car is interior space. In the old car, I would be hunched up here and I'd be really uncomfortable, whereas, as you can see, I'm sitting behind my imaginary self here and I've got plenty of legroom. Nissan says there's 58mm more than there was in the old car. Headroom, that's a little bit tighter, there's a little bit more than there was in the old car, but actually on a reasonably long distance, I'd be quite comfortable back here. Now, although space is pretty good, it does feel a little bit claustrophobic here in the back, and that's partly because, again, of this rising shoulder line. So for someone of my height, if I look sideways, well, all I can see is a chunky rear pillar. But as I say, overall, not too bad for space, and certainly by the standards of the class, more than acceptable. But let's take a look at the boot. Now, boot space wasn't the strength of the old Juke, but this new car is much, much better. Overall capacity is 422 litres, so for context, that is almost as much as you get in a Qashqai, which is Nissan's car from the class above. And as you can see, you can fit a couple of suitcases in there quite easily. But it's not just the space on offer, because if I take these suitcases out, you'll be able to see that although you're left with quite a big lip at the entrance here, you've actually got a height adjustable boot floor. And if you put that in its highest setting here, as you can see, the lip disappears almost completely, and the shape of the boot is also quite nice and square. Access is also better than before because you get a broader aperture. There's no intrusion here from the light area, and you can also fold down the rear seats in a 60-40 split. Right, now, for the time being at least, you don't have to worry about choosing an engine in the Juke because there's only one, and it's a 1-litre 3-cylinder petrol with 115 brake horsepower. And on the whole, performance is actually perfectly acceptable. You do need to keep the revs above about 2,000 RPM before it starts to pull, but when you do that, other than one or two flat spots in the power delivery as you accelerate up to speed, acceleration is actually not bad at all, and it's quite a smooth engine. It's more so than equivalent 1-litre engines in the likes of the VW T-Cross and the Skoda Kamiq, for example. Now, more engines are likely to join the range in the coming months and years. We don't know exactly what they'll be yet, but Nissan has ruled out a diesel. It says that's not what Juke buyers are expecting at all, and it's also said that a hybrid model will very likely join the range in the future. What's it like to drive in other respects? Well, I'm not going to try and pretend this is some kind of sports SUV, but it is so much better to drive than the old Juke, I promise you. And that's both in terms of cornering, but also ride comfort. So let's start with cornering. Now, there isn't too much body roll through corners, by the standards of small SUVs at least, and actually it grips pretty well. The steering, well, that's quite communicative as well, so on the whole, I'd say this is at least as good as something like a VW T-Cross. Now, as I've already mentioned, this car does have the largest wheels that you can get on the new Juke. They're 19 inches in diameter, so it's unsurprising that ride comfort isn't perfect. It's quite choppy, and you can certainly feel bumps as they pass beneath the car, but even so, it's quite a bit better than the old Juke, and you can go for smaller 17-inch wheels, which Nissan have told us, and we can only believe them at this point in time, that ride comfort is better if you do that. Whether it will be quite as good as something like a VW T-Cross, I doubt it, but we'll certainly give it the benefit of the doubt for the time being. Right, we're just pulling off the country roads here and onto the motorway, and as you pick up speed, the first thing you're aware of is there is quite a lot of wind noise from around the windscreen pillar here, and also quite a lot of road noise as well. You can probably hear that rumble in the background. It's certainly something you're aware of, but the real thing I wanted to talk about on the motorway is the autonomous driving features, and Nissan calls the system ProPilot. So you've got several things you can do. You can obviously set normal cruise control, so you can set your speed, but also there's an adaptive function, so the car will maintain a set distance from the car in front and effectively brake and accelerate accordingly. But there's more, there's also a self-steering function. And what you do to activate that is you turn on adaptive cruise control, and after a short period of time, as long as you're driving along the motorway in your lane, there's a driver display there and the steering wheel will go green, and that means that the car has taken control. And on the whole, as long as there's nothing too complex coming up, it actually does a pretty good job of steering you along your lane. Now, this self-driving tech comes on Techna and Techna Plus grades, so they're relatively high trim levels. And if you go for an automatic gearbox, you'll also get a feature that in stop-start traffic, it can bring the car to a halt and start it again, so you don't even have to worry about that. But here are 5 more things you might want to know about the Nissan Juke if you're thinking about buying one. Prices for the new Juke start at $17,395, which is about the same as a new Skoda Kamiq, although this range-topping Techna Plus model, well, that'll set you back $23,895. And if you do go for a Techna or a Techna Plus model, you'll get an 8-speaker Bose sound system as standard that even has speakers here in the headrests. There's plenty of scope for personalisation on the new Juke, although not on the cheapest 2 trim levels, Visier and Ascenta. Go for end connector and you can have a black, silver or red roof with matching door mirrors, but if you want to add a bit of colour to the interior as well, you'll need to go for top spec Techna Plus trim. The new Juke comes with this 6-speed manual gearbox as standard, although for a bit extra you can also have a 7-speed auto. The new Juke is predicted to hold on to its value really well by small SUV standards, certainly better than the likes of the Citroen C3 Aircross, although the VW T-Cross, that's expected to hold its value even better. Overall then, the new Juke is much better than the car it replaces, and we reckon it's one of the better small SUVs that you can buy today. But to find out just how good, we'll be putting it against its rivals in the coming months in the UK. But what would you like to see it go up against? Let us know in the comments section below, because let's face it, there are a lot of rivals to choose from. Thanks for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, give us a like, hit subscribe, and for lots more information on the new Juke, just head over to our website, whatcar.com. We'll see you next time.